hello again everyone, and welcome to the 5th in my series of videos about my shot, steel and stone horse and musket era rules, which are available in paperback from Amazon all around the world and in PDF format from my PayHip site and from Wargame Vault and from Wargames Atlantic as well. Thanks to all of them, and also Caliber Books in the UK and On Military Matters in the USA are also distributing the hardback versions. So get in contact with them if that's who you want to support. Anyway, the start of the 5th video. You will recall at the end of last video where we did a full turn for Borgenmark and Prunkland. The upshot was at the end of that turn, the Prunkland infantry von Renscher and von Eintopf delivered a pretty enormous volley, and the artillery opened fire, and also the riflemen ensconced in the edge of the wood there that you probably can't see from that viewpoint. Unfortunately, you might catch a glimpse of some of them between the trees. And poor old Ostergotland took the brunt of that and took 9 casualties. And as a result of that, we went through a reaction test and came to the conclusion that they passed. Well, those of you who are eagle-eyed and have a copy of the rules were probably going through and saying, hey, hang on a minute, Henry, hang on a minute. You've missed out something really big here, which was to take into account the actual number of casualties that had been inflicted on the Ostergotland regiment, which was a total of 9. That means I got the maths wrong. Culpa mia. I was obviously tired at the end of a long day filming videos. So what I've done is I've put together kind of a little slideshow to take you through the correct calculation for the Ostergotland regiment's reaction. And we're going to assume that they rolled the same dice. They rolled, in fact, a total of 8 on their 2 dice. So we'll keep that as if that's what they'd rolled. But let's go through the calculation together as it should have been. This should only take a minute. So here we go with the first slide. So it's the Ostergotland's reaction corrected. So yes, they are still a large unit. We always make an adjudication of the unit size at the time of making the morale test. And they are still a large unit, benefiting from the fact that they started out being a very large unit, you know. But there we are, they're still a large unit, +1. They are advancing. That's another +1. The closest enemy, those pesky skirmishers in the woods, are in soft cover. So they don't like that, so that's -1. However, they are a good solid 18th century unit in close order. That gives them +2. They are well supported. They've got the Ostergotland regiment on their right flank. They've got cavalry and artillery coming up behind them, very close by. So they're definitely supported. That gives them +2. And their brigadier there is right there with them and within command range, so he automatically gives them another +2. So our subtotal at this point is 7 points. But, and this is where it comes in, they suffered 9 unsaved hits. So that's -9 on that total. That takes us to a new subtotal of -2. Now remember that they rolled 8 on their dice. That's +8 on the dice roll, giving them a final total of 6. Unfortunately, as B-class troops, they would have been alright if they were A-class, but they're B-class troops. That means they failed the test by 2 points, ladies and gentlemen. So they didn't pass, they failed. Not disastrously, but they have failed. So having gone through those calculations, welcome back to me at the table, we turn to the book, bottom of page 26, and it's on the play sheets as well, of course. Reaction test results. The unit is advancing, if you look along the top there, but they failed by 2 points. That means the Ostergotland regiment must now retire. And as you'll see, the definition of retire above that table says, at the start of the movement phase of its own next turn, the unit makes 1/2 of the standard move for the terrain it's occupying away from the nearest visible enemy, which in the case of Ostergotland means that they're going to probably want to sort of incline over in this direction. Okay? They will avoid any impeding any friends, and they will move through gaps if at all possible. The move distance is not subject to leadership variation. Okay, so it's 1/2 of a standard move for infantry, of course, is therefore going to be 1.5 base widths. So it's not a massive rout or retreat, but they have, effectively, they're kind of flinching, aren't they? Ooh, and I'm not surprised because of all that musketry. But it basically means that for the time being, Ostergotland isn't going to be advancing anywhere. That is a compulsory move at the beginning of the next turn. So, Prunkland's feeling a bit cock-a-hoop at this point, I would imagine. So, that's a real live reaction test, now done correctly. And I can only apologise for my, obviously, brain meltdown towards the end of the last video. But there we go. And thank you to all those eagle-eyed readers who have been playing the rules themselves or buying and reading them, who contacted me and said, Henry, I think you'll find. And in this case, I don't mind them pointing out my mistake because, yes, you need to know what it should have been. So that's that dealt with. Okay, so what I intend to do in this video is to basically play through the game another turn and pause, slow down whenever there's something that comes up that I think, oh yes, you really ought to know about that because that highlights another rule or whatever. You will remember when it comes to shooting, of course, Ostergotland have not yet shot. They've still got their first volley in reserve, but they've just taken a bit of a drubbing. Westergotland hasn't fired. The skirmishers over here, the Jäger, have. Over here, von Einthoff, this section of von Einthoff did open fire, and that section of von Renscher did open fire. But these companies and those companies still have their first volley. First volley doesn't apply to the artillery. The Jäger have already also had their first shot, so now they're just kind of loading and firing as riflemen do and getting on with it. Right, so what I wanted to do, however, since we did it last turn as well, shall we see who gets the initiative for this turn, which of course will be turn 3. Okay, let's set the old video going, roll the dice, and they've got a 3 for Borgenmark and 1 for Prunkland. So Borgenmark has got the initiative. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's issue some orders. Well, we know that Ostergotland has to retire slightly. Now, 1.5 base width isn't far. In fact, if I use this marker, you can see probably better. 1.5 base width is just behind where the Brigadier is there. And if they come at an incline, probably, let's say it's probably going to be something, yes, I'll move him slightly out of the way, they'll probably end up about there. Okay. So they've got to do that. Quite clearly, this column of Westergotland is vulnerable. Let's see how intelligent the general is going to be today. This is, of course, General für Circa de Militaire Expedizione, Thomas Afheni. Right, Thomas, let's see if you're going to use your intelligence at this point. Your intelligence is 56, remember, so 56 or lower. 23, yes, he's an intelligent chap. Fantastic. So he's going to do intelligent things. So This unit needs to start deploying into line, and probably if we start on the right flank deploying here, and some companies may well have to hop over the wall, so they will screen Ostergotland but be able to fire, but we'll have to see how far they get in this formation. The artillery, well gosh, this is a bit tricky, isn't it? But I think what we should do with the artillery maybe is bring it over that way, so it will be able to screen eventually Ostergotland. The cavalry, well, their tormentors are in the woods. They can't charge those riflemen in the woods. So what about the guns? Oh, that's a bit of a distance, because normal heavy cavalry move is 5, and charging of course adds a couple of base widths, 7. Ooh, I think that's quite iffy. I think they would be better off, actually, I hate to say this, but they're probably going to be better off reforming back here, maybe in a single line, to put themselves at a longer range from those pesky riflemen until a target of opportunity arises. And the skirmishers, well, they can carry on doing sterling work. I think we need to bring those right round the flank. Okay, so that's Borgenmark's orders, and so yet again I will speed up the bit and come back to you after I've finished all that movement. So this is the leadership role for the infantry brigadier. Oh dear, he's blundered. Oh my God. Right, well that's not good. So we roll another dice and he rolls a 3. That's a blunder and a 3. So we consult the table and we can see that basically all units deduct 2 base widths from their movement this turn, but remember that doesn't affect Ostergotland because that was a compulsory move they made. So this unit of infantry will deduct 2 base widths. Any mounted units would deduct 3 base widths. He hasn't got any. And finally, for 3, any formation changes take twice the normal time. Now that is going to be irritating for the Ostergotland, isn't it? Anyway, so that was his leadership role, which is why I decided to come back and talk to you about that. Just coming back for a moment to point out that because they suffered 9 casualties and they haven't yet had time to stand still and reform, Ostergotland now carries 9 disruption points. Okay, that's why I put those little dice there. Anyway, back to the action. Okay, that's the infantry. As you can see, the Ostergotland have started to deploy, but because of the deduction, because of his blunder, obviously they're not moving as fast as they would like, but they have managed to get a few bases into line here, including the command stand, and the rest, there's a couple of companies moving over to get ready to hop over at the wall, and these are moving up to deploy on this side, but that's going to take some time, isn't it? And they've got a wall to cross. So the light infantry have whizzed round the flank and are now in a position potentially to enfilade von Eintopf over on the flank here. Anyway, now it's just time for the cavalry commander's role, and let's hope he does rather better than the infantry commander. Okay, let's have a look at him. He rolls a 6. He passes by 2 or more. So that's excellent. So the cavalry have got plenty of move distance to complete their orders. And so basically they can add 2 base widths to, they've already got 5. So 7 base widths, more than enough to do what I want to do with them. So see you again in a minute. Okay, so we're back. So as discussed, the cavalry has just pulled back and formed a single line there to try and get a bit of distance between them and those pesky riflemen. The artillery, the howitzer, the general said, right, okay, you're probably going to be most useful over on that flank to helping to protect Ostergotland, maybe having a shoot at those skirmishers. I'm not sure that's a brilliant idea. We might be better off shooting at the artillery gov. Over here, this brigadier, well, what can he do? He's like gnashing his teeth, and he should obviously go back to Staff College, I think. So, with all that movement going on, Ostergotland can't shoot. Are they still in musketry range anywhere? Should we have a look? Are they still in musketry range? No, they're just out of musketry range now. Just out of range. So that's good for them, because that means that they won't take another blast at the moment from these guys unless they move, which of course will affect their shooting. These guys obviously can't shoot because they've moved to full move. The skirmishers, being pesky skirmishers, they can always take a pot shot, can't they? So, shall we have a go with 4 pesky skirmishers at, and they've got muskets, medium range, okay, but those are enfilading that part of von Eintopf. So let's give it a bit of a go. So, we'll run through the calculation quickly. So, it's 4 skirmishers, that's 4 dice, remember, 1 per base of skirmishers, and they are shooting at those infantry. So let's have a look. There's nothing for the range. There's 4 5s or 6s. They've moved, so that's going to be 5s or 6s. Okay, and they are enfilading the von Eintopf regiment. So that's +1 for enfilading. Not their first volley. They did move. So it's +1, -1. So it's 4s, 5s and 6s. Okay, so we've got 4 chances of a 4, 5 or 6. And checking carefully now, that is 3 hits on von Eintopf. Ouch. So von Eintopf, because their muskets shooting at them, have 3 chances of a 4, 5 or 6 to save. They save 2, but they take another casualty. Oh dear. So let's put that over there and reduce that to a 2. No morale test required there, very obviously, because they've only taken 1 and they're still a big unit. That ends Borgenmark's turn. So now let's have a think about what von Eintopf wants to do. Well, the riflemen can just carry on taking a pot shot. The cannon, I think let's switch target to shoot at Ostergotland and see if we can get them literally on the run. Von Renscher, well, isn't this interesting? I think what we could do with von Renscher is have them start to pivot round like this, okay? So that they basically will form a line more across in that direction, obviously taking care not to totally mask the artillery. It may be that the artillery have to shoot at the cavalry, if that's the case. And von Eintopf, well, what are we going to do about these pesky skirmishers? I think what we're going to do about these now is to form a crotchet. So these will pivot backwards so that they're no longer going to be enfiladed. And they might even be able to take a shot, but we'll see. I think it's pivoting back to form a crotchet is more important. And this portion of von Eintopf, I want to swivel round in this direction. Okay, so what's also going to happen here, and this is thinking ahead, is providing something of a gap for the heavy cavalry to come through. So let's bring around von Eintopf like this. The heavy cavalry for the moment will stand still so they can get rid of that disruption point. Okay, so let's see how the leadership goes. Let's start with the, where's he gone? My infantry brigadier, okay, who's there, and he needs an 8 or less, remember, for passing. And he scores an 8, so that's just a good solid, he's passed, they can do what he wants them to do. Okay, that's that one. What about the cavalry brigadier? Well, it's like he's not actually ordering his cavalry to do anything except stand still. So under these circumstances, I think it's fair to say, do you know what? There's no need for him to take a test, because all he wants them to do is to stay exactly where they are. So there's, by not issuing orders, he's not risking blundering, of course. And under those sort of circumstances, if you're not actually intending to do anything with your troops, that's fair enough. You don't have to take a leadership test. That would just be daft. And again, I don't think the general's needed at the moment, is he? Everything's looking all right. Von Eintopf are fine. They've only taken a couple of casualties. So let's head off, ladies and gentlemen, and again, I'll come back when something of note requires your attention. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Okay, you can see that Prunkland has carried out its moves. As I said, the cavalry is just staying exactly where it is. Here, von Eintopf, half the unit has swung back to kind of form a crotchet. The other half of the unit has moved forward slightly, just a base width. Von Renscher started the swinging gate kind of manoeuvre. Half the unit has moved a base width or less, so could open fire. The other half has moved more than a base width, so wouldn't be able to open fire. As I suspected, they're blocking the field of fire for the artillery, but he's still got a shot at the cavalry over here. I took the liberty of the skirmishers, because they act on their own initiative. They've moved slightly further along in the woods so that potentially they can outflank the cavalry, maybe even sneak into that walled enclosure. That would be fun, wouldn't it? But basically, I'm going to count those skirmishers as having moved, because they're kind of shuffling forwards along the edge of the woods there. So the next thing we need to test is a bit of shooting. Now, these guys can't shoot at the moment because that took them a whole move to kind of pivot backwards. Obviously, you can imagine that's quite a tricky manoeuvre, so they're not going to have time to actually shoot at the skirmishers, but they're certainly keeping a wary eye on them. Now, the other half of von Eintopf, yeah, that's interesting. They can fire. Let's have a look. What's the range for von Eintopf? Well, okay. Well, I think it's only fair that if they're going to do any shooting, no more than, say, 3 bases could shoot at the Ostergotland regiment. Over here, well, we could take a pot shot, couldn't we, at the Westergotland regiment, because we can see them through the great gate. It might be worth just having a shot. Why not? Direct a company there. Over here, von Renscher, yep, that half of the unit could certainly have a bit of a pop at the Ostergotland regiment. And over on the far side, we've got the medium artillery. And while I'm holding the bounce stick, let me point out, someone got in contact with me, thank you very much indeed, to say that there's a discrepancy between the canister close range in the book and on the play sheet. And I've looked back through all my notes, and sadly, that's a typo that crept into the Wargaming Compendium 10, 11 years ago now, so sorry about that. Canister range for medium artillery should indeed be 6 base widths as shown on this range stick, and in fact as shown on the play sheets. So I hope that's clarified that. So I'll have to issue an errata. We'll come back to that later. But the artillery would be the first to fire, and they would be at normal range. So again, I'll speed up this bit while I do some calculations for the artillery, who are rolling 4 dice, and for the infantry, who roll 3 dice per base, as you know, with deductions for having moved, and of course it's no longer first volley for them. Right, back to you shortly. Okay, so that is the end of that turn, and I would say, shall we come back and do another video to see how things progress and see if we can get this battle to come to a conclusion. I hope you've enjoyed this little outing and seen the progress that's been made. Obviously there's some decisions to be made by both commanders here in this exciting little action, and I'll see you again next time. Take care.